Hey, it's your girl Patricia coming to you from Louisville. This is another segment of Walk It, Talk It. As we are still practicing this social distancing, I thought I would hop on here to see what everybody's up to. So, I started my podcast just this week and did a little intro, brief information about me and what this podcast is going to be about. So, the main purpose is to educate, to engage, and to empower. So, I've been on a journey uh, just with health, with career, with a lot of things. And I feel like this is an opportunity for me to be able to share and support others. I'm always going to say I'm not an expert on everything, but I'm definitely an expert on me, the battles that I fought and won, and the ones that I'm still in the process of winning. So, we're going to talk about everything from faith to finances to fitness to family and everything in between. So, one question that I get asked quite often, which is what really motivated me to create this platform, is how I lost the weight. How am I losing weight? So let me just start by saying, so I'm 40 years old. Just turned 40 April 3rd. Shout out to all my Aries. We definitely deserve a do-over after all of this corona madness is over. But anyway, um, just give you a little bit to explain. Basically, I had an eye opener. It was 5 years ago. I lost the father of my children. He had a lifelong battle with high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, just an abundance of health issues. So he had another health problem. It was an aneurysm, and they basically were unable to operate. They were unable to do anything that could have potentially saved his life because of all of the complications related to these other things, high blood pressure, diabetes, right? They were so far out of whack that if they had attempted to open him up for any type of open heart surgery, they said he would have died on the table. So instead, my family and I got 2 days with him where we were able to talk to him, say our goodbyes. One of the saddest times of my life because he was a great person and a great man with a great heart and a great dad. Not only to the one child that was actually biologically his, but he was the father to all three of my children and loved them all the same. So that was my moment. That was my aha moment. A lot of times you hear people talk about with drug addiction or alcoholism that they had a moment that changed the trajectory of everything else. And that was my moment where I knew that things would never be the same from that moment on. To me, food can be an addiction just like anything else. Poor eating habits in general can be addictive like anything else. If I had to title this segment, I would tell you guys to jot down: change your mind, change your life. Change your mind, change your life. And what I'm finding out is that is applicable to anything in life that you want to do. If you believe it, if you set your mind to it, even when you're failing at it at the beginning, you can do it. Just keep trying, just keep getting back up, keep going after resources. The best thing you can do is find somebody who has already conquered and accomplished where you're trying to go, what you're trying to get, what you're trying to achieve. One thing that I have noticed is that a lot of us today um, don't believe that we need help. There's no shame in getting help. And I'm just going to be blunt and say, Black people don't believe we need help. But there is nothing wrong with having a mentor, a coach. I remember in my 20s, you couldn't tell me shit, just to be honest. I would not talk to people about, my problems and how to overcome. Now I need a coach for everything. I got a mentor for everything, a life coach, a health coach. I have a spiritual coach. You need a coach that is able to show you yourself, but then they can also lay out the plan for where they've been and how they accomplished what you're trying to be successful at. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're telling you what to do, or you have to take their path and do exactly what they did, but it does provide a certain amount of clarity and vision for you to see that it has been done and it can be done. And in the process, it might prevent you from making some of the same mistakes that they made. So there's definitely some value in adopting a mentor. But let me go back. So this is my story. Patricia, walk it, talk it. This is what we're doing, right? So we're here to educate, to engage, to empower, and hopefully something that you hear from me might help you along your journey. So growing up, I was always overweight. I always struggled with self-identity. I remember often feeling very depressed, feeling like I didn't look the way I should look, not feeling pretty. And I had a great family, great parents. I have two awesome parents, been together 62 years, 13 siblings, all by the same parents. And I mean, I had great parents, but they didn't know everything that I was feeling. So I'm number 12 of 13. So my family often says they've got group 1 and group 2. So I'm a part of group 2. A lot of my older siblings were already out of the house and gone by the time I came along. So me, an older brother, and my little sister were a part of the second group. And a lot of times when you are around a lot of people and amidst a big family as well, then people don't notice that you're not okay. And I'm just saying that I remember a lot of times just not being okay, just not feeling good about how I looked. I can remember at 10 years old, starting to be on diets and wanting to walk with my parents and, wanting to go exercise and asking for treadmills and bikes for Christmas and things like that, because I did not see the value in who I was and who I was becoming. So that's kind of where my battle with weight began. A series of bad eating habits growing up. I can just remember my dad worked third shift, and I remember I would call him and say, bring me some wings home. And he would stop at this local bar and bring some wings home and wake me up at 3 in the morning, and we would eat wings and eating White Castles and things like that. So I can just remember starting those poor eating habits very young, and them just kind of growing and growing and growing as I got older. Now, again, excellent parents. So don't go back and thinking like, oh, well, her parents were. No, my parents were amazing. But, it was hard for them starting out, getting married young and having so many children. And by the time group 2 came along, things were a little bit better. Dad had elevated on his job, and he always worked either 2 or 3, side jobs as well. So they had an opportunity to do more for group 2 than they did with group 1. So they were just happy and they loved children, and they did the best they could with what they had to work with. And so if you're a parent, I know you can relate. I say that to my kids all the time. I'm not the best parent in the world, but I have done the best I can with what I have to work with, and you learn along the way. So 3 kids, right? I have a 20-year-old, I have a 17-year-old, and an 8-year-old. So we'll come back to that, but yeah, I've got 3 kids. So 19 years old, I'm married. I got married at 18, very young. Again, very impulsive, just really struggling with self-identity. And so the first man that told me he loved me, and that I was beautiful, I married him. Turned out not to work out, but that's okay. I learned a lot from it. Had a son. So at 19 years old, I was pregnant with my first child, and I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. Very, very scary. Was very worried and troubled by that. Both of my parents have high blood pressure. Both of my parents have diabetes. Both of my parents, one of my parents has heart trouble. The other parent has cancer, so cancer survivor twice, and just a series of health issues along those lines throughout my family. So it was very scary. I remember calling my mom and talking to her, they're going to put me on medicine, and they were worried about me being able to survive a pregnancy. Now, at this time, I was not severely overweight. I was maybe 20 pounds overweight, but I still didn't realize my worth. Don't get me wrong. At that time, I was still struggling with identity. But as I look back now, and at some point, I'll post some pictures so you all can see, but I'm trying to get back to 160, So at that time, I still didn't really know how beautiful that I was and am, regardless of the weight. Because one thing you have to realize for those out there who are struggling with self-identity, beauty is truly in the eyes of the beholder. It is from the inside out. You can have the beautiful looks, body, and you can be ugly on the inside. So, as I grow older and I grow wiser, I really, really understand that truth even more, or more than I ever have. So back on the story. So 19 years old, diagnosed with high blood pressure. And that's where it began as far as really starting to struggle with health. I ended up having a second child at 21. And then having a third child at just about almost 30 years old. So it was definitely an issue with health and weight all the way along the way. Just continuing to develop more bad eating habits. I always worked. I was working a bunch of jobs. I never wanted to be a statistic as far as being married young and those sort of things. So I always worked 2 or 3 jobs, but that became more of my excuse for, poor eating, stopping at McDonald's on the way home, stopping somewhere for lunch, and just always just eating out. And then when I would eat it at home, it was not necessarily healthy food, frying everything, really heavy on seasoning, things like that. And it just started to become more and more of an issue. But I didn't really realize it was an issue yet. I didn't realize that it was getting far out of control until my third pregnancy with Aiden. So with my third pregnancy, I was sick practically the whole time. I was taken off from work at 6 months pregnant because they were afraid that I was not going to be able to deliver the baby and my son. And high blood pressure, it was just out of control. It was constantly up, and they wanted me to just stay in bed, prop my feet up. It was the most difficult thing. It was just a really, really trying time in my life. And I just had no idea that I was so bad off. The thing about weight, aside from the pregnancy in general, just being very, you know, emotional, and sometimes things bother you and hurt, and, things are heightened because of the change in your hormones and things like that. I was just emotionally broken um, because I was young. I was just about 30, and I should have been in better health than what I was. I mean, having to go to specialists, increasing blood pressure medicine. I think at that time I was on 4 pills, 4 blood pressure medicines. One of them was a dual. So if you really wanted to break it down, I was probably on 5 blood pressure medicines at that time because one of the medications was a dual medicine. Um, so much medicine, and I just, even at certain times I couldn't even afford the medications that I was on. And so my mom helped me quite often, when I would humble myself enough to tell her that I needed medication that I couldn't afford. And I was trying to keep my blood pressure down, because I did not want to lose my child. So remember what I said, change your mind, change your life. So here I am, I'm a young woman now, 30 years old. At this point, I have gone through an abusive marriage, a verbally and physically abusive marriage, that ended in a not so good, um, divorce, and a series of other just really, not good, uh, relationships, because I was looking for love, and I was looking for someone to love me and to validate me. None of that happened. None of that happened until I decided to change my mind and change my life. We'll be right back.